Another one that's a close 50-50 fight and has an unpredictable fighter is the next fight. It's Uriah Hall versus Ronaldo Souza. It's Jacare. Now, obviously, this is a tight one. It opened at -133 with a slight edge going to Ronaldo Souza. Now, Jacare is taking on Uriah Hall. Uriah Hall is very dynamic. He had a lot of hype coming out of, being on the Ultimate Fighter and whatnot. But he's kind of been on a little bit of a downslide here. In the last 7 fights, he's 3-4. He's lost to some really good guys, though. He beat Gegard Mousasi. Let's not forget about that win in 2015. But then he came off of that and lost to Robert Whittaker, lost to Derek Brunson, lost a rematch against Gegard Mousasi. He knocked out Christoph Jocko, but then came back and then lost to Paulo Costa as well. So these are some good fighters that he's lost to.
Yeah, exactly.
No shame whatsoever. But these are TKOs and TKOs and TKOs, and he's getting knocked out a lot. And he's 35. I don't know but these guys are both a little bit older. I'm going to back up for a second. What do you think is going to happen here? Nate, you can go ahead and jump in on this if you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, for one, how are we not going to comment on the salty 16-9 record for a top-tier MMA fight? Like, come on, bro. That's you're getting up there, right? I think also, has there ever been a bigger letdown? I know this point has been made a billion times, but in their inaugural episode, how could it not? Has there ever been a bigger letdown from somebody on The Ultimate Fighter? And then, this guy was the next Anderson Silva. He's knocking people. He's viciously. You're actually afraid to fight this guy. And then you're like, oh, what happened to this dude? He's just not the same guy anymore.
I was so hyped because he's Jamaican too, and I'm like,
He once seemed so intimidating, and after, to your point, he has lost to some good competition, and I think maybe that's, you kind of feel bad because, look at who he's fought since he actually entered the UFC, with how much ass he was kicking against just average Joes in the Ultimate Fighter, people who wanted to go on to compete at that level. You got to say, all right, Uriah Hall now facing, being what is salty 16-9 record versus one of the best middleweights ever, and Jacare hasn't had the best run of form either. I think he's won one of his last 4 fights.
He's coming off of 3 losses in 4 fights. One win against Chris Weidman, but a loss against Kelvin Gastelum, Jack Hermanson, and Jan Blachowicz.
Right. Good competition for him as well. Jan Blachowicz was at 205 too, right? So I think he's, a lot of middleweights are getting struck with that. Hey, I want to, this weight cut's killing me, and then actually get murked by somebody who's much, much bigger than they are. And this maybe wasn't so bad at 185. I think Jacare's time at the top may not be he's ranked 14th now, right? There was a time not that long ago, 4 or 5 fights ago, where he was 3 when he was fighting Whittaker, and then Whittaker went on for the belt. I think as much as I think Jacare is on the decline, I don't think that Uriah has been on any sort of incline in his UFC career, really. And I would say that I would almost say it's going to come naturally that Jacare is going to strangle him, right? Could any of us really be surprised if you're seeing it, round 1, round 2, Jacare clips him with something, or even off his back, he's submitting him. I just think Jacare is so good in jiu-jitsu that, and you have a guy who's really not great anyway, and and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, because obviously he's fighting at the UFC. He's been there. He's had how many freaking fights, but Jacare was an elite fighter and then went on a bad run of form and has tanked. But let's not forget how good he still is at what he does. For me, I think he submits him, and I wouldn't I'd be surprised if it was even more competitive than that. I'd be shocked if Uriah Hall won.
A quick tidbit right before Jad goes here. In the 15 fights of Uriah Hall's career, he has had 4 KO losses and 5 decisions with 0 submissions. So this would be his first submission loss in his career. Now, Jad, what's your take on this fight?
Yeah, I think kind of more the more obvious kind of prediction would be that Jacare is going to strangle him, like Nathan said. But I don't know, man. If I got to be honest, Jacare's looked like he slowed down a little bit in the last.
He is 40 years old,
and I feel like he might. Like I said, I think it's a slowing down of his pace. Maybe his cardio is not as good as he used to be, just for natural reasons. And I feel like he can't take a punch as good. The dude just looks like he slowed down to me. I don't know, but So I'm gonna take Uriah Hall on this one. I think he's gonna like knock him out with some weird shit, with some spinning shit.
I think that this is Ronaldo Souza's last fight in the UFC. He's off 2 losses now. He's 40. I think Uriah Hall takes a victory here. Now that doesn't take away from Jacare being game as all hell, but for the reasons you just said, Jad, I'm gonna have to go with that as well. Now, obviously, if this hits the mat and Uriah Hall is controlled for any amount of time,
right,
more than 30 seconds, you're in trouble because now he can get comfortable on top of you, and strength is the last thing to go, and his technique is always going to be there from a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu standpoint. My opinion, Uriah Hall can use a little bit of some explosion. He's never had the best wrestling defense, but if he can somehow shuck off Ronaldo Souza, he can get a little bit of he's an underdog here. So for me, I like Uriah Hall in this fight. He's a little bit younger, a little bit more fresh, 35 versus 40, and this is Jacare coming off of 2 losses. He's looking beatable. This isn't Jacare of old, so we have to also take that into consideration here. I've got, personally, Uriah Hall via decision.
Okay, let's go to the next one.
All right, so we got Michelle Waterson versus Carla Esparza. What do you guys think about this fight between the karate hottie taking on a very game Carla Esparza here?
Nathan?
Yeah, you want to start with me? Listen, we got the karate hottie in the building, right? We got the karate hottie, Michelle Waterson. I love Michelle Waterson. Listen, unless Michelle Waterson is fighting somebody who is, let's say, like top 4 and up, I'm gonna back her just because I like her and because I'm not putting, for me personally, like I'm pretty neutral about this fight. Carla Esparza is a beast. But I really like Michelle Waterson. I think, technically she's very sound. She goes by the karate hottie for a reason, right? She's great on her feet. I don't necessarily see a finish in this fight. But I do see, to be honest, this one's almost hard to make a prediction for. Mike, what are the odds on this one? Who's
yeah, I got you. Let me tee this up a little bit better here. So we got Michelle Waterson, who's a slight razor thin favorite at a plus 108. So come on, it's a 50-50. Let's be honest here. Now Michelle is coming off of a loss to Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Obviously, you can't hold that against her. It went 5 rounds to a decision. So she didn't get finished or anything like that. Speaking of finishing, out of all of her wins, 9 of them came by submission of the 17 here on Sure Dog. So, I mean, she's a submission specialist. She tries to finish people, or she grinds out decisions like she did in the last 3 victories against Karolina Kowalkiewicz, Felice Herrig, and Courtney Casey. So obviously, when it comes down to it, like she's only losing to Tisha Torres, Rose Namajunas, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Like these are the creme de la creme of the division. And with Carla, Tatiana Suarez, Claudia Gadelia, Randa Marcos, which isn't as much of a name, and then Joanna Jędrzejczyk in terms of their losses. So that's why this is really down the middle.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying, right? Like Michelle Waterson, I think loses. Maybe she's not, the elite of the elite. She can't beat the ones who are definitely champ contenders or former champs, right? In the sense that, you look who she's lost to and they're right at the top level. That being said, she still says she wants to be the first mom champ, right?
Right.
So I'm going to say, and then again, though, Carla Esparza is 2-2 in her last 2 fights, but she's coming off 2 wins. Personally, I would go Michelle Waterson because, listen, like I said, Karate Hottie's fighting anybody who isn't one of those people who I see as like top tier elite cream of the cream. I'm going Karate Hottie.
I mean, in a 50-50 situation, you go with the guts. So what do you got here, Jad?
I got Michelle Waterson decision, and she is gonna just I feel like outstrike her for the whole fight. I don't think she's gonna get taken down. If she does, she's not gonna stay down for sure.
And she's great at submissions, so.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna see a finish, to be honest. No. But I feel like just the decision, she's just gonna outstrike her. Just gonna light her up.
Yeah, I think Carla likes to use her wrestling to try to put people in bad positions and try to ground and pound and do that kind of stuff because she doesn't have the longest reach. Michelle Waterson with that karate stance and everything, she's going to be able to maintain distance. If it does get close, she has 9 submission victories, so she can use a Kimura to threaten to get back to her feet. So these are the types of things that you can use in order to grind out a decision victory. It's a unanimous decision across the board here from us. Next fight up, we've got Aleksei, the boa constrictor Oleinik versus Fabricio Werdum making his return. A couple of 42-year-olds here, boys, in the heavyweight division. This is exciting. Now, the last time we saw Fabricio Werdum was a loss, a KO loss, devastating, against Alexander Volkov back in March of 2018. So it's been, just over 2 years? So
that's because he was suspended, right?
Right, suspension.
Yeah, that PED
He's
infraction.
out. So you get knocked out. You got that PED suspension. You're out. He's coming back against Aleksei Oleinik. Last time he fought was a submission armbar against Maurice Green. But prior to that, Aleksei got KO'd with the knee and the punches from Walt Harris and KO'd for devastating style from Alistair Overeem. So this is a very interesting fight. Now, Aleksei, obviously, last time he fought was just this January. He just fought. He just got a submission. He's a little bit fresh. No quote-unquote ring rust. So I'm going to say the odds real quick. It's plus 247 for Aleksei Oleinik as a heavy favorite in this. Jad, let's start with you. Who you got in this fight?
If the odds were not so bad to bet on Fabricio Werdum, I would put my whole house on it and everything I own, because in my mind there's no clearer fight than this. Fucking Aleksei Oleinik, I don't know why he's fighting anymore. I know he's the constrictor and all that shit, but the last few fights I saw from him, bro, he's the slowest motherfucker out there. Like he's like 3-4 speeds behind everybody. Like he's just like an old guy, like just fucking in there. So fucking Fabricio Werdum, knockout or submission. I doubt submission, but definitely a knockout, bro. I'm gonna tell you this, no doubt.
You've got a very strong opinion from Jad. I love it though. That's what we like to see here on Content Cube. Now, Nate, what do you got here?
Well, for me, this is just remind me of this. This is Aleksei Oleinik, not the fighter who keeps submitting people off his back with
yes.
With what's that choke called?
Ezekiel.
The
Ezekiel choke, yeah.
Right. Okay. So are we not going to break this down, Jed? I completely agree with you. He's the slowest guy in the world. But for me, I completely agree with you. I could totally see Fabricio, one of the greatest heavyweights ever, knocking him out just because of how slow he is, even ring rust aside. However, the way that I'm looking at this is submission expert, right? Because that's what Oleinik is. He's like, listen, I don't have the explosiveness or the agility to be a knockout artist, but what I can do is let you take me down and submit you from my back. Is there a scenario where we see the great and mighty Fabricio Werdum getting submitted by Aleksei Oleinik? Right? Does anybody think that? And please, tell me, even the viewers beyond just you two, if anybody really thinks Aleksei Oleinik is going to submit, boy, this is going to come back and bite me in the ass when he freaking Ezekiel chokes Fabricio, eh?
I
think it's, for me personally, right, like no way, right?
No.
I think we're all on the same page in saying jiu-jitsu, in a straight-up jiu-jitsu match, which realistically this is probably going to be, who wins? Fabricio.
In a straight-up jiu-jitsu match? Yeah. I
straight
think
up jiu-jitsu match,
no doubt.
Right.
Yeah.
So now we're going to negate striking because Fabricio has better striking anyway and say, listen, I think this is a clear Fabricio Werdum. Welcome back to the UFC. Hope the PEDs were worth the time off. But even if it's not a choke, if it's an armbar, if this goes to decision, it'll be 15 minutes of two guys trying to submit each other, which is going to be super boring because they're both old and not fast and not explosive. So for me, I would say Fabricio Werdum via submission because I can't see him getting submitted or knocked out by Oleinik.
Okay.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I mean, for me, just the fact that Oleinik is just such a heavy underdog, it's like you can't. This is not smart money to go the other direction, though. He's a huge underdog for a reason. I want to make it clear, just in case I misspoke earlier, because I think I might have. Fabricio Werdum is the overwhelming favorite here. Now,
okay, I think you did misspeak earlier because I was like, wait, really? Oleinik's the favorite?
So Oleinik is not going to win this fight. That's all I can say. It's that simple. I don't really care where this fight goes. Fabricio's got the edge. Even coming off of 2 years, and him and Aleksei coming off of a win in January, it's GG's. I'm sorry, but Fabricio, this is I don't want to say tune-up fight because that feels disrespectful, but at the same time, I don't know what shot because Oleinik's bread and butter is Fabricio's bread and butter. And it's like, how are you? For me, I'm kind of fearful for Oleinik. Like, are you just going to get absolutely brutally knocked out? That's an honest question for me because his hands looked like they weren't even existing. So, like, I'm just being honest.
All right, so who's the
I got
better
Werdum.
striker? This is the
I got
question.
Werdum all day.
Werdum, all
Werdum.
day, bro.
Who is the better striker?
Werdum.
Aleksei Oleinik or Ben Askren?
Oh, Ben. Oh my God, bro. Come on.
had to
that's
say.
a good question.
Who's pulling up like this?
Oleinik still, though.
Like this? Like, okay, I'm going to shoot now.
I mean,
Oh, gosh.
Oleinik did land a punch on Maurice Green that put him on his ass and then submitted him. So
Right,
we've never seen Ben Askren even land a punch in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. Against Robbie Lawler, that was some schoolyard bulldog choke, and then he got absolutely ended. And then Damian Maia outstruck him. So let's be honest here, it's GG's.
Guys, let's fucking do the last fight because we fucking went so long right now.
Yeah, let's do it. So Donald Cerrone versus Anthony Pettis. This is an absolute barn burner of a rematch here. This is absolutely crazy. Now, it's kind of crazy when you open up SureDog and you look at Showtime Pettis's win-loss record. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He's 4-8 in his last 12 fights. That is not great. That is like, but who's he losing to? RDA, Eddie Alvarez, Edson Barbosa, Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier, Tony Ferguson, Nate Diaz,
Jesus.
and then he lost to Diego Ferreira, which is like, that's the guy who's up and coming and that was just in this January, was able to make a little bit of a name off of him. Now we all understand what just happened with the 3 last fights for Donald Cerrone, taking on Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, and Conor McGregor. So these guys are facing the cream of the crop, and they're going and facing the best of the best. Now Donald Cerrone, 37 years old. He's always been that guy to get to the dance, but never really, and then break his own ankles on the dance floor. And then Anthony Pettis just has not been the same since 2014. It's just a completely different fighter that we've seen here. But 2 guys who are very game, like to fight, and Anthony Pettis beat Donald Cerrone with body kicks last time. So who you guys got in this fight with the with the odds favoring Pettis here?
Man, can we just first say how crazy is 155, man? Like, man, you look at the guys that these guys have fought, and I know they've both bounced around a little. Which reminds me, is this fight at 155 or at 170?
It's at 155, I think, or is it 170?
Because that's silly. Like, I think because according to the UFC website,
it's welterweight.
They're fighting at welterweight. Good, because I was like, why on short notice are these guys going to fight at 155 when they both fought at 170? That's ridiculous. All right, so let's do this. Weight cut aside now, right? You have. Both are aging. That neither of them are necessarily what they used to be, but I think Cowboy still brings it, right? Cowboy just doesn't bring it in the main event. So he's the main event of the prelims. Is that big enough a stage that he's going to be intimidated by a guy who he's already lost to? I would say no. I'm going to take Cowboy looking to get vengeance for the pathetic display against Conor, which, to be fair, Conor beat the crap out of him. There's nothing really. What is he going to do? He's talked about it since then. He's like, honestly, he hit me with his hip, then his shoulder, then his shoulder, then his shoulder, then his foot, then his fist, then his foot, then he's like, I had no idea. I had no time to get going. I don't think Pettis is going to bum rush him the same way, right? I think just technically, yeah, you're right. He did finish him with body kicks last time, but I don't know, man. It's tough. I love Cowboy, man. How are we going to bet against Cowboy and at 170, not at 155 when he's not as drained, he's faster. So I think both of these guys are probably better at 170 than they are at 155, at least when fighting competition that is also a truer like 170 by frame and not cutting 30 pounds to make 170, right? They're both fighting guys who are, well, both of them are around the same weight, right? They're both walking around 170 anyway. I would probably say, although I was very impressed with Pettis fighting when he knocked out Wonder Boy, which is crazy, right? That's absurd. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I would still probably go Cowboy, only because I think Pettis is on a declining level where Cowboy can finally prove, not that he doesn't do this all the time, but prove that, listen, I'm not. Maybe I can't beat, Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje and Conor, but I'm still at this level that I can still beat guys like Pettis, who, although at one point was at the highest of levels, as you said, Mike, is has lost 8 of his last 12 fights. That's absurd, albeit to stiff competition.
Chad?
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Yeah. I think that definitely Cowboy has a lot of motivation to get in, like Nathan said, and just like avenge himself or whatever. But in my mind, bro, I have like, I don't know. I can kind of picture how the fight's gonna end. Call me fucking Mystic Jad. You know what I'm saying? So he's gonna fucking spin kick him to the body against the cage, and he's gonna fucking TKO him with punches. And I'm talking about Pettis doing that to fucking Cowboy. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like Cowboy's body is very compromised. That's his weak point. He cannot take any damage to the body. I feel like Pettis has amazing kicks, and this might be the difference, man. Some kicks to the body and shit like that.
100%.
I could totally see that happening too. Yeah.
I can totally see that happening. This is a real tough fight for me to pick. I don't trust Pettis as much as I obviously used to back in the day. Donald Cerrone coming off of some really devastating, psychologically hurting losses too. He's going to want to bounce back and be like violent in this fight. Anthony Pettis is a minus 144 favorite, and Donald Cerrone is a plus 127. So the money says that Anthony Pettis should win this fight. I think Cerrone's days at the top are done, and this is not a top contenders fight by any stretch of the imagination for either of these fighters. Who do I got? I'm going to go with if I had to pick, I'm going to go with Donald Cerrone. I just have a gut feeling. I'm just going to roll with it. Pettis is a rightful favorite. I'm going to go with Cerrone just because of that dismal performance he had against Conor McGregor. He's going to go out there and start just wiling out. And he might get knocked out in the process. Let's be very clear here. Like, he's going to go out there and start wiling out. He has a lot to prove. Stephen A was talking about how he quit in the octagon. Stephen A was getting ripped on everything. He doesn't. What does he know about this? And then lo and behold, months later, Donald Cerrone says himself, I didn't show up. Donald Cerrone showed up, not Cowboy. So that's going to be interesting to see how that pans out.
There's one other thing I think we have to consider for this. Both of these guys are taking this fight on pretty short notice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tank for gas tank in a 15-minute fight where neither of them had a full training camp. Who do you see getting the job done? Who stays in better shape? Who can probably go longer? I'd still say edge Cowboy. I think Cowboy fights so frequently that he's always ready to go at least 15, and I think Pettis isn't, because Pettis we saw him gassed out against Tony. Mind you, Tony puts pressure on him, but it was like before 15 minutes is up, he's getting tired. And I think if Cowboy can put a pace on him, which I think he can wear him down and beat him, especially if he hasn't had the full training camp. Yeah,
and let's not forget about Cerrone's ground game. That's something to be that we haven't seen in a little bit of time, but it's definitely one of his bread and butter elements, as well as his to go with the striking. So there's an option there.